IDF Chief of Staff, Moshe Bogie Yaalon. He served as Defense Minister for 3 years under Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from 2013 to 2016. That includes the summer Gaza war Operation Protective Edge 5 years ago. After that, he entered politics. He was head of the Telem party, which is now part of the Blue and White Party. He is number 3 on the list, and the latest polls show that with just a few days left to go until Election Day, Blue and White is the biggest party in the country with a narrow 1-seat edge over Netanyahu's Likud party. Sir, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me, Jeff.
I want to start with the news of the rocket attack. We're going to look now at video from Ashdod overnight. A big story in Israel today is the Prime Minister, during his campaign speech, left the stage when the rocket alert went off. I want to ask, sir, as a former IDF general and chief of staff, do you agree with Netanyahu's decision to leave the stage when the rocket alert went off?
I believe that the bodyguards of Benjamin Netanyahu made a decision to lead him to the shelter, which is right in order to save his life. But the problem is not this specific event. It's the deterioration of what should have been a situation in the Gaza Strip. I would say the erosion of deterrence, which was relevant until April 2018. Since then, the approach of the Israeli government to kites and balloons was the main reason to allow Hamas to deteriorate the situation in a way that they started by igniting our fields and today launching rockets.
But what we saw last night then, when he listened to his bodyguards and listened to the home front commands, do you think this was the right decision to leave the stage temporarily, to leave the event?
Yes, at the end it was a decision of the bodyguards. I believe that in a better way he should have decided to shut the cameras before doing it because of the implications of such an image in a broader perspective.
What are those implications of the image?
You can see the celebrations in Gaza. Actually, it's understood that he was there. In other cases, it wasn't allowed to broadcast it directly in real time. In this case, because of the elections, he decided to do it. He understood that he was in Ashdod, a piece of intelligence information, which was given on a play to the Hamas.
So it looks weak in a way. It shows Hamas that the Prime Minister is...
Sure. That's why they celebrate. So we should have considered it. But generally speaking, let's talk about the situation. The main problem is the erosion of our deterrence in the last year or so because of government approach to the situation. Instead of charging Hamas by heavy price, giving Hamas buckets of dollars. This is not the way to keep deterrence, which exists until April last year, since protective edge operation.
Last night, several cities came under rocket attack. There was Ashdod. Also, Ashkelon came under attack. Gabi Ashkenazi, another former chief of staff, number 4 in the Blue and White Party, was also on stage. And General Gabi Ashkenazi addressing the crowd. Let's listen to what he had to say.
The Prime Minister is having his own event in Ashdod. But we are not afraid here. We are not afraid. I'm not afraid, neither of Hamas nor Hezbollah. This is the answer.
A different style here, saying we're not afraid. He stayed on stage.
He was cool, in this case, with his experience in the military, and kept the people, the crowd, in a way to be calm. He allowed the people to go to the shelter. But not
But as
to be,
you know, as a former chief of, it's against the rules. It's the home front command. He's supposed to leave.
Oh, at the end, he allowed the people to go to the shelter, but he kept himself cool, not to frighten the people. I believe that he behaved in the right way.
It's not a bad example, you don't think?
No, at the end he called the people to go to the shelter. This is the example for saving life. And for him, you know, in many cases, your personal behavior, and I have been in such situations for many times, your performance as a leader, as a commander, it's very important to keep the people not to be frightened. But again, why people are frightened, not just in this event, in more than a year, since April 2018, because of the bad policy in which our deterrence has been eroded.
Let's listen to what Prime Minister Netanyahu had to say. I want to get your reaction about Iran and about Hamas. And he made a big claim in his speech last night. Let's listen to the Prime Minister.
I know, because they said so. I know Abbas said he prefers Gantz and Lapid over me. I know that Iran's tyrant Khamenei said that he prefers Gantz and Lapid over me. I don't know for sure what Hamas is saying, but if they are targeting us right now during a live broadcast, you all realize that they don't want us to win either.
Sir, the Prime Minister saying that Khamenei, that Iran wants you to win, that Iran has spoken about hoping you win. Can I get your reaction to that claim from the Prime Minister?
For which claim? I didn't understand.
Netanyahu last night saying that Iran wants blue and white to win.
No, you know, it's a manipulation. It's a propaganda. Let's leave alone the propaganda, the false propaganda, which we have to absorb during these elections. Let's talk about policy. What should be done? Iran is the main generator and instigator for instability in the region. It should be at the top when we deal with our threats in the Middle East. Having said that, the way to deal with it is blaming blue and white. This is not the right way to deal with it. We should have a policy, and unfortunately, recently, there is a distinction between the Israeli policy and the American one. It was been demonstrated by the fact that John Bolton...
Last night, fired by President Trump.
Was fired.
Is that a victory for Iran?
That's a victory for Iran. This is the weakness of the United States, because looking to what has happened in the last couple of months, in one hand, Trump was very tough, imposing crippling sanctions, very important, declarations, very important, but ignoring the fact that the Iranians intercepted American UAV. It was a signal of weakness. They understand that Trump doesn't want to go all the way to confront them. He is now on the way to engage them. That's why he fired John Bolton. That's bad news for, I believe, Israel. That's bad news for what I believe should have been the American policy.
So not just Trump last night fired John Bolton. Also, the White House said we will meet Rouhani with no preconditions. And the White House said that it could happen in 2 weeks at the United Nations, that a face-to-face meeting could happen very soon. Is that bad for Israel's security if a meeting happens?
It depends what will be the outcome of this engagement, because we have very bad experience going back to 2012. In 2012, it was quite a successful policy to press Iran all dimensions: political isolation, crippling economic sanctions, waving with credible military option, and we understood that the regime was afraid from internal uprising. That's why Khamenei came to the table on his knees, ready to be engaged with the great Satan America. Unfortunately, Obama's administration didn't use this opportunity to press Iran to get rid or to give up the nuclear project, the proliferation of arms and terror, and the missiles project.
But now with an election so close, is Netanyahu, do you believe, is the Israeli government, are they underestimating Trump and his desire, it seems, to meet Iran, to engage with Iran?
And I'm not sure whether it is underestimation or wishful thinking, because at the end, Trump has its own interests. In this case, it's not our interest. We believe that this rogue regime in Tehran should be under pressure to the minute that they will will face the dilemma whether to go on with rogue activities on all fields, not just the nuclear, or to survive. We believe that the decision will be survivability. It hasn't been the case with Obama. I'm afraid it's not going to be the case with Trump.
So we're almost out of time, but I want to go back to you talked about with Hamas, the loss of deterrence. That Hamas is attacking the prime minister when he's speaking. What would you do differently? We saw after the rocket attacks, there were 15 targets hit by IDF planes. What would you do differently, specifically, especially for the people in the South who tend to vote Likud? How would you tell them that our plan is different and will stop the attacks?
To go back to our achievements after a protective edge operation. And the Hamas decision not to shoot a single bullet until last April, more than 3.5 years, was because of the consideration of the price that should have paid for this kind of provocations. So immediately, now, target killing. If it is Palestinian Islamic Jihad, they have leaders in the Gaza Strip. Immediately. I'm afraid...
target assassination.
Immediately. And of course, to charge Hamas as well. Hamas is responsible for the Gaza Strip. They have their own assets. To charge them with heavy price. Not having that, this is a signal of weakness. Nevertheless, I believe that nowadays, and this is the understanding among Hamas leaders, Netanyahu, before the elections, doesn't want to be engaged in any escalation because of political consideration. And we are in this situation not from April, even before. He understood, according to his perception, to avoid escalation before the elections. And we are going to change it.
So very quickly, because we're almost out of time, after the election, you build your coalition. Can you work with Arab MKs? Do you want them to be, in order to make sure you have a majority, how do you build a coalition?
We claim that the best coalition should consist of blue and white and Likud. Israel will be ready to come with us. Without Prime Minister Netanyahu as a leader. Why? Because all the problems of corruption and what he's doing on many fields that we haven't discussed, democracy and so forth.
Could Democratic Union be part? Could Yamina be part? These smaller parties.
We claim that Israel should have been Jewish and democratic. Those who agree with us and will follow our proposals, plans, platforms, we might be partners. We have our principles, and we call all those who are ready to join us according to our principles to be part of a broad coalition, not a narrow one, which is going to immune the Prime Minister, which will be radical. This is a choice.
Thank you very much.